pandemija, kai yra daug nežinomybės ir neatsakytų klausimų, yra tiesiog tobula terpė plisti sąmokslo teorijoms. Priešingai negu gali pasirodyti, jomis tiki ne tik folijos, kepurėlėmis pasipuošę marginalai. Sąmokslo teorijos gali suteršti net pačių racionaliausių žmonių protus. Kas ir kodėl kuria sąmokslo teorijos, kodėl jomis patikime ir kaip kalbėti su jomis įtikėjusiu žmogumi, pasikalbėjau su socialinės psichologijos mokslų daktaru Daniel Jolley. So, have you ever believed in a conspiracy, and how did you realize that it was in fact a conspiracy?
So with conspiracy theories, you can kind of see some key ingredients of what a conspiracy actually looks like. So I believed myself, I'm not sure. I've been immersed in the psychology of conspiracy theories for about 10 years. So I just see them now as more research topics, as it were. But with a key ingredient of a conspiracy, it's always suggesting that some issue or large event is explained by a secret group of perceived powerful people rather than explaining that event as normal circumstances. So believing that the government is involved or or doctors or experts. And indeed, when you kind of see rhetoric that kind of paints the picture that the elites are doing some kind of conspiracy, some kind of cover-up across every kind of event, this kind of makes me think, okay, this seems to be just a conspiracy theory, because the suggestion that they're involved in every official event is probably unlikely.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't believe in any conspiracy even when you were a teenager, you know, the UFOs visiting Earth or something like that?
Well, no. Well, with the UFOs, it's a real interesting one, because to believe that there's life out there, that is not necessarily a conspiracy theory. It comes a conspiracy theory when we suggest that aliens have visited Earth and this has been covered up by the government. Now, I don't necessarily believe that. I believe that life form does exist, but I trust that we've not found it yet. And let's hope 2020 isn't the year that we actually find it and aliens come and invade us.
That would be too much for this year.
Well, you never know. You never know.
Yeah, 2020. You know. Hopefully not. Yeah. We tend to think that only people, you know, in tinfoil hats believe in conspiracies, but it's not true, or is it?
So people wearing tinfoil hats is very much a stereotype of who believes in conspiracy theories. Now, there are some people who do wear tinfoil hats, so I don't want to undermine their experience, but it's been used as a way to other people who ask questions such as these. Well, in reality, it's just not true. Millions of people believe in conspiracy theories. They ask these questions. So, of course, all these millions aren't wearing tinfoil hats. That just does not make sense. So the rhetoric, as I say, is there to other, but in reality, people believe in conspiracies as a way to explain the world. They have questions, and a conspiracy theory offers a very simple answer to those questions.
Conspiracies that turn out to be true really don't help us, right? For example, that the NSA is spying on the people's activities online and so on and so on. And it used to be a conspiracy, but Edward Snowden proved that it was actually true. How do you reason with people who say, yeah, we don't know yet, but maybe in the future it will turn out to be true, as it was with these conspiracies?
I think that's a really great point, and indeed it's used as a rhetoric to say, well, if that one was true, what about this one? But of course, with those other examples, that one you just mentioned, they've been brought out by whistleblowers. They've been brought out by journalists asking questions and seeking the truth. So far, at least, a conspiracy has never been overcome or overturned by individuals sat at home doing their own investigative work. Instead, it's the gatekeepers. So it's the journalists, for example, asking the questions. So when people talk about real conspiracies occurring, that is true. There's not that many examples, but it's true. But then it's talking about how it was actually overcome. So, for example, that whistleblower. So in essence, it's trying to have our trust in our social networks, in the way society is governed, in a way, having trust in journalists to seek out that truth.
So definitely not a guy posting this fact or conspiracy on his Facebook, right?
So at least to date, so I'm not suggesting in the future that won't happen, but at least to date, work has shown that real conspiracies have been uncovered by actual journalism, by whistleblowers, by journalists asking questions. So it makes it very unlikely that someone sat at home piecing together random pieces of information will uncover necessarily a conspiracy. Doesn't mean that it won't necessarily happen in the future, but I think it's very unlikely.
How does this pandemic help conspiracies? Is there an increase of conspiracies? Because to me personally, it seems like every week there's tens or even maybe hundreds of new conspiracies emerging, especially regarding COVID-19, the new vaccines, and it doesn't seem to be stopping.
So with conspiracy theories, they bloom in times in society. So it could be a virus outbreak, rapid political change. It's when something large is happening in our worlds. So indeed, there's virus outbreaks in the past have also bred conspiracy narratives. Usually through election years, we always see conspiracy theories to bloom because it's based around change. So with COVID-19, it was always going to breed conspiracy narratives because that's what history has shown us. And the reason that it does that is because during a crisis, we feel anxious, we feel powerless, we feel threatened. We want to understand what is happening. And a conspiracy theory offers a very simple solution for what is a complex problem. So in the environment where we're seeking answers, people may be drawn to conspiracy theories. And indeed, with a crisis such as COVID-19, that is still emerging in a way. People are still heightened to engage in conspiracy theorizing. And of course, it also relates to our prior beliefs. Maybe we were already a little bit skeptical about the world. We thought the world was full of conspiracies. Maybe we didn't trust vaccines in general to start with, which means that when we find ourselves in this crisis, we may be even more prone to engage in these theorizing. So someone who maybe was anti-vaxxers and thought vaccines were for profit and this was covered up before COVID-19, they may also be susceptible to believing in conspiracies about the COVID-19 vaccine. So yeah, COVID-19 is a flourishing ground for conspiracy narratives, as the previous virus outbreaks have been too, and I'm sure also future outbreaks will have similar conspiracy narratives.
And also, science doesn't have all of the answers about the virus, about the pandemic, about the medicine or the vaccines. And the vacuum seems to be always filled with something. And if there's somebody who's not limited by the scientific facts, but his or her imagination, it seems that they are just, spreading their opinions as facts.
I think that's a real great point, because science is still evolving in a way, and we're still learning about the virus. So someone who is seeking those answers may find the conspiracy belief just kind of fits the bill. It explains what has happened. It offers a scapegoat maybe. So some suggest that 5G has been the cause of COVID-19. And this not only offers a scapegoat, well, the reason it's happening is because of 5G, but also a way to stop it. And indeed, we saw many arson attacks on 5G pardon, towers, because people thought that if they stopped and brought down these towers, it of course would stop COVID-19. But as experts have highlighted, this is not true. COVID-19 isn't caused by 5G, but it kind of highlights people trying to understand the complex world that we are in, and in essence trying to claw back some power. Because of course I can imagine that if you believe it's caused by 5G, you want to kind of stop 5G. But of course, that's based in misinformation. It's not true. And in reality, obviously, it caused significant impact on the communications industry. And never mind the abuse that engineers received because they were seen to be part of the conspiracy.
Mm-hmm. Regarding stopping something, you've been researching the negative consequences of conspiracies. And in real life, what are they? What have you found out?
So conspiracy beliefs can have a significant impact on people's beliefs and the way they behave in society. It can reduce their intentions to vaccinate, to engage in climate change behaviours. Because, of course, if I believe climate change is a hoax, why would I want to try and reduce climate change? Also, as mentioned, it's linked to violent reactions. So if I believe someone is conspiring, someone being the government or someone in a minority group, I want to call them out on that and, in essence, be violent towards them. But of course, it can also impact our health behaviours in general. So we know that people don't want to vaccinate, but we also know that people who believe in COVID-19 conspiracy theories are less likely to follow the advice of the government, so based around self-isolation, and are less likely to want to take a COVID-19 vaccine. So in a way, this is really dangerous, not for the individual, but also for society. But if someone is not vaccinated, that can impact both me and also you. So the harms of conspiracy theories are very much in the real world, and we can tangibly see the impact of these beliefs.
What about the negative consequences of those who believe that 5G is dangerous?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, people who believed in this conspiracy were more likely to justify and be willing to have arson attacks against 5G kind of equipment, but also be accepting towards violence towards those who they perceive to be conspiring, which happens to be engineers on the ground. So in a way, it's motivating people to act out in the real world, which we found that this could be explained by feelings of anger. By that believing 5G is the cause that's been covered up, it can make me feel angry, which means I'm likely to want to act out on that anger. I want to call out the conspirators. At least to me, that seems like a normal process to do. So you have this belief, it makes you feel angry, you want to act upon it. But of course, the danger is this belief is not true. It's based in misinformation that is just not factually true. As I say, COVID-19 isn't caused by 5G. So all the arson attacks and the abuse that people received was just based on misinformation, which really is a nice example of the dangers of conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm. You wrote a very interesting paper on HIV discrimination and conspiracy theories. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so whilst I've talked about people being drawn to conspiracy theories because they feel out of control, they feel anxious, it can also be their prior beliefs about the world. So we found that people who received discrimination in the past are more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. In a way, it makes them hyper-vigilant looking for a threat. That if I have been subject to discrimination before, people have been out to get me before, I'm more likely to believe in a conspiracy theory. And in this context, it was based around sexuality. So being discriminated against because of your sexuality. And we found this was associated with heightened belief in HIV conspiracy theories. So the belief that it's all human-made. And in turn, this was associated with taking more risky behaviours, which in this case was not taking medicine to do with HIV. So in a way, people's prior experiences can make them more likely to believe in a conspiracy, which then leads them to act in a very negative way because they don't trust scientists, they don't trust doctors, so they push back on that evidence. So I think, in essence, it's trauma. People's experiences of trauma can make them more hypervigilant to engage in conspiracy narratives. Because as I say, if they've done it to me before, why can't they do it to me now?
Talking about not trusting doctors and scientists, what about conspiracies regarding COVID-19 and stopping the pandemic? Do you think this can actually extend the pandemic? Because, as we spoke before, that people who, for example, won't vaccinate because they believe vaccines can microchip them or damage their DNAs.
That's a real good question about it extending the pandemic. It's been shown to play a real potential dangerous role. And as you say, if people are not willing to get a vaccine, that could obviously lead to the pandemic just extending. Of course, people who don't want to vaccinate, they have that decision for a whole range of different reasons. Some people may be skeptical towards vaccines, not because they believe in a conspiracy, but because they need reassurance based around that it wasn't rushed, that it's safe. Those are questions that need to be asked. And indeed, it's where we can use experts and scientists to provide those answers. But for those people being told about how the vaccine was developed and reassured that it's going through the same processes as any other vaccine, they are probably likely indeed to get the vaccine. It's those people who are more conspiratorial in their viewpoints, where they think the vaccine is dangerous because it's being covered for profit, because there's something sinister going on with the vaccine. That is where it's more problematic. Because when people listen to experts and doctors, when someone has a conspiracy theory, they're skeptical, they're suspicious of any official account. Indeed, they become immune to evidence. So when someone is talking to them about the vaccine and how it's been developed, they're going to discredit what they are saying because they're motivated to defend their original belief. So in a way, science communication is really important. And I do think that people who are hesitant can be engaged and have a discussion. For those who are at the other end who are conspiratorial in their viewpoints, it is more challenging. And potentially those are a lower number of people. So maybe we're able to get enough people with the vaccine to kind of ensure that we kind of can get through this pandemic. But as I say, science communication is still really important. So even though the conspiracy theorists may be distrusting of scientists, etc., I still think dialogue is really important. So we can sort of talk to those people about their beliefs, try and understand why they have their beliefs in a way, have compassion. So science communication is important for everyone, I think.
In your opinion, is like talking and having a dialogue between, the scientists, for example, and the society, can this actually improve public understanding and trust in science?
So we know that with regards to anti-vaccine conspiracy theories, giving people facts can reduce their belief in conspiracies and improve their vaccination intentions. Now, as I say, for those people who are strong endorsers of conspiracy theories, giving people counter arguments that say vaccines are safe may not necessarily work initially for them. I think for those people, it's more that dialogue, as you mentioned, where you have compassion. In a way, you want to build that trust. You want to be a trusted messenger where you, in a way, affirm the values based around critical thinking. Because we know these people will be in their echo chamber, where they're in essence holding on to their beliefs about the world, and things that discredit it, they are likely to ignore. Now, we do this for every belief that we have, and the same is true for conspiracy narratives. So if we can, in essence, confirm values based around critical thinking, we can encourage them to think about all evidence, so their beliefs, but also other beliefs. And this dialogue may help them kind of work through the conspiracy theory, because we know it can be really influential. It can change your beliefs and your behaviours. So in a way, giving people facts will work. But it's maybe for those who are the harder conspiracy theorists, need a little bit more discussion based around those facts.
What do you think about bullying people who believe in conspiracies or pseudoscience? Because there's a lot of public shaming as well, like, hey, you believe that vaccines are dangerous, haha, you anti-vaxxer, and so on. Isn't this kind of a dialogue and public shaming and, not being nice to each other dangerous, actually?
That's a real great point, generally, and that's why I mentioned compassion, trying to understand that person's belief, why they've got there. But of course, if someone comes at you saying that you're wrong, they're right, you're silly, that's going to put you on the defensive. And in a way, that ridicule would just not work. No one likes to be ridiculed. So if you want to have a discussion with someone, you need to build that rapport, you need to build that trust. Maybe work out some similar viewpoints that you have. Like, for example, that you both think it's important to question authorities. I'm sure, questioning things, being a critical thinker is important. The danger comes with conspiracy narratives is where you believe in, you're suspicious of every official account. That suspicion is governing everything, and that you see yourself as immune to evidence in a way. So if we can kind of highlight, yes, we agree that we need to always ask questions, but we also need to make sure we listen, because our brains are accustomed to making us believe just what we want to believe. So if we're open-minded to a whole range of information, in essence, be that true critical thinker, it may help. So back to the point, compassion, don't ridicule, try and understand.
The amazing Carl Sagan had a very amazing quote. He said that we need to temper our criticism and skepticism with kindness when we speak to each other. In your professional research, do many people believe in conspiracies?
So, well, yes, many people believe in conspiracies. And that's why to kind of other and say they're just for paranoid people just does not make sense. People are being drawn to conspiracies as a way to explain a very complex world. And it offers a very simple solution. So that is really appealing for people. So indeed, polls suggest, for example, that 60% of the British people believe in at least one conspiracy theory. And similar polls have been found elsewhere in the world. So it's really important to try to understand the motivations behind these conspiracy beliefs, and to paint them just as paranoid tinfoil hat wearers just does not make sense. And indeed, that ridicule may actually just push them further into their conspiracy narratives. Instead, dialogue, as we say, is really important.
How do you deal with people who believe in conspiracies in your life? I mean, you mentioned the compassion and being nice to each other, but sometimes it is really difficult when you speak to someone who is close to you and emotions get involved. And have you yourself tried talking to, for example, your aunt or cousin who genuinely believes in some conspiracy?
Well, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there by saying that it's very challenging. When you've got someone in front of you who's very different to what you believe, it can be a real challenge to try and engage them in conversation. So I think it's going to have to be careful for your own kind of emotions, that you don't get carried away and start a kind of shouting match, but instead try and think about, okay, I love this person. I want to understand why this person has these beliefs. In essence, what are these beliefs fulfilling for that person? What are they getting out of these beliefs? Is it that it's making them feel more empowered because they believe in this conspiracy and it's giving them some unique information? Indeed, if you can find that out, maybe you could try to help them in other ways, to try and make them feel empowered via other routes. So in my own example, indeed, when the vaccine was first announced, I had text messages saying, well, I'm not getting the vaccine, blah, I think I don't trust it, etc., etc. So in essence, I tried to use some of these advice right then by talking to them and trying to understand why they have that, and in essence referring them to other facts and other scientists who are talking about this vaccine. So in a way, not making it political with our politicians, but instead referring them to scientists and doctors who are seen actually to be the most trusted. So in general, people don't necessarily always trust someone in Parliament, but they will trust someone who's a doctor. So kind of giving them advice from the doctor's perspective and sharing YouTube clips, for example, of a doctor talking about the vaccine and COVID seem to help in that particular regard.
We mentioned facts a couple of times during this conversation. You're a scientist, I'm a journalist, and we know how to fact check the information we receive. But what would your recommendations be for everybody? Because people receive so much information every day, and not all of this information is correct, and not all of the people have time to check everything carefully.
So I suppose one good bit of advice is to keep track of your emotions. So something that makes you really angry or even really happy is probably going to push, and has been purposely made to push those emotions. Mm-hmm. So when something makes me really excited, I wanted to share it straight away with my Twitter feed, for example. But maybe when we kind of feel that emotion, it's good to stop and just think for a moment. Okay, why am I feeling these emotions? Is it because something's written to kind of please my prior beliefs? I believe something about the out-group, for example, and this piece of information just supports that viewpoint. Maybe I should stop and think about, okay, who's written it? Is there any bias? What is the consensus? Just do a quick Google search of that keyword and see, are other people saying the same thing? Or is it just this random website that I've never heard of that is saying this piece of information? So in a way, that kind of emotional reaction led to me spending 30, 60 seconds just checking to see what other people are saying about this issue. And I might find actually, a whole range of different news articles, different blog posts, different influencers are talking about the same thing, okay, I can trust my reaction here. I can be really happy and share it. Or indeed you may think, oh, actually, this one person said this. There doesn't seem to be a consensus. Actually, quite a few other news articles are saying the opposite. Maybe I should think carefully before I share it. So think to your emotions and kind of stop and think.
That's a very good advice. And my last question is, what is the most surprising conspiracy that you've ever heard?
I always find the ones suggesting that a celebrity has been replaced by a lookalike to be really fascinating. And potentially those ones maybe have the less kind of negative consequences compared to other ones. And indeed, there's a whole range of different celebrities, such as Paul McCartney, Avril Lavigne, all being suggested to be replaced by a lookalike. And indeed, with that conspiracy, it's hard to think about who are the conspirators. So someone's replaced them, but why? So it's kind of a weird conspiracy, but it always kind of makes me laugh.
Okay, so thank you for your time and thank you for a very interesting answers.
Pleasure, thank you.
Tai tiek, ačiū, kad žiūrėjote ir likite su Delfi televizija.